Welcome to this episode of Silicon Bites. And in this one, we look at China and its role in fueling the war in Ukraine. Before we jump in, thank you to everyone who supports the channel through Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, and of course, everybody who likes, subscribes, and adds comments to the videos. It is a massive, massive support. Let's jump in. The mounting power of the Axis of Authoritarian States is indeed troubling, and their apparent impunity and immunity to external pressure. Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. We ask in this episode, has Russia's war in Ukraine now actually transformed into China's proxy war against the West? We'll explore naval drills, the supply of Chinese drone parts that is fueling the devastation in Ukraine, oil diplomacy, and of course the elephant in the room, Taiwan. The Axis awakens. How active are the so-called crinks? Recent intelligence describes a more coordinated crink quartet than ever. A US national threat assessment warns Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are increasingly acting in unison to undercut the US interests globally. The Wall Street Journal. The administrations of both Biden and Trump have both rightly been focused on the rise of China as a threat, not only because of its economic and manufacturing might and the global imbalance of trade that it creates, but also its increasing geopolitical confidence and bluster. Conventional wisdom suggests that the Crink group is more partnership of convenience than true alliance, but we are going to question that assumption through the course of this episode. According to the Wall Street Journal, the so-called axis of autocracies is defined more by a shared opposition to the US than by mutual defense obligations. That is the Wall Street Journal. But I think this episode will suggest that that partnership goes far further, and none of those powers want to see any of the others fail. That said, cooperation is growing, and some of the partnership may be working below the radar rather than in plain sight. Iran supplies drones, North Korea sends missiles and even troops to Russia to fight against Ukraine, and China provides electronic and industrial backing, while Russia shares missile know-how with the isolated hermit kingdom. The Axis may not coordinate every single detail, but it is practically enabling war and massive death and destruction on the edge of Europe. Is Russia's war against Ukraine a proxy war for China? Many US officials see Ukraine as a theater where China is fighting the West indirectly. As the Atlantic Council reported, China believes it is waging a proxy war through Russia. That was reported in Foreign Affairs. China's motive is clear: keep US attention tied up in Europe, diminish Western cohesion, and prevent a united front in the Indo-Pacific. Chinese officers may even be visiting Russia's front lines and managing direct technology transfers. Certainly, North Koreans are at the front in Kursk and will be sharing insights and learnings to their leadership and possibly to the Chinese as well. There may also be data transfer from combat and surveillance drones that are active at the front to help plan and build the next generation of offensive drone capabilities. China is not just neutral, it's actively sustaining Moscow's offensive capability, according to SIPA. Now on to sea power and the China-Russia naval drills. In August, joint Sea 2025 drills were launched in the Sea of Japan, involving Chinese and Russian submarines, destroyers, air defenses, anti-submarine warfare, and joint search and rescue training. That is according to Reuters. This is the most substantial set of exercises so far between the two powers and is not simply showmanship. It tests real coordination, submarine communications, torpedoes launched in concert, air defense networks interlacing. Some analysts suggest this is a rehearsal for multi-theater joint action, with separate regions threatened from Asia through to Europe. That's according to Reuters. It also serves a message, a deterrence posture aimed at Japan, the US, and Taiwan. Days before this, the US deployed two nuclear subs in response to Medvedev's nuclear brinksmanship, as we described in our previous episode. The Russian provocation and the naval exercises were possibly narratively timed to coincide. This is according to The Sun. Certainly Putin's lapdog Medvedev does not bark unless his chain has been yanked by his master. The drone supply lines, Chinese components in the Russian war machine. Ukrainian intelligence claims about 80% of critical electronic components in Russian drones were Chinese by early 2025. That's according to Business Insider. In fact, some decoy drones were found to be 100% Chinese made, according to the war zone. These hardware pieces, engines, microchips, arrive via shell companies and deceptive labeling, such as being labeled as cooling units, feeding at least 20 Russian military factories that are churning these drones out, according to Business Insider. The drones powered by this tech have rained destruction across Ukraine, inflicting civilian casualties nightly. Skills developed in China are weaponized against Russia's neighbor. Well, let's look at what may be on the horizon, the autonomous beast AI drone warfare. Russia is fielding autonomous loitering munitions V2U drones, which use AI targeting and thermal images built from Chinese and indeed some Western components, even NVIDIA chips, that is from the Institute of the Study of War. These drones can autonomously select and bomb targets, civilian infrastructure, urban blocks, without human command. The result is a rising level of terror and technical sophistication that previously seemed far off and only appeared in sci-fi scenarios. But this is rapidly becoming a reality in Ukraine, and the new technologies are potentially providing a headache for air defense systems. The new levels of speed and higher quantities of units can be built up into autonomous AI swarms. And then, when this happens, you'll see the immense challenge Ukraine faces to keep up and defend itself against these coordinated swarms of death. China seeks an opportunity to use the war to develop its tech at warp speed and test the systems and components in real time. Let's look at the economic bonds now. China's support through oil, finance, and trade. Russia buys massive quantities of Russian crude, about 2 million barrels of oil per day, helping the Kremlin pocket nearly $80 per barrel post-logistics fees, according to Euromaidan Press. But China's support isn't limited to oil. Ukrainian foreign intelligence reports reveal evidence of tooling machines, gunpowder, chemical inputs, and microelectronics moved into Russia, according to Business Insider. Diplomatically, China's foreign minister told the EU foreign chief, Kaja Kallas, Beijing doesn't want to see Russia lose the war in Ukraine because the US and allies would then be free to turn their full attention to China. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. China is gaining a geopolitical pause paid for with the blood of Ukrainians, and they see no moral problem with that statement, let alone the strategic actions and implications. This underscores China's goal, prevent Russia's defeat, so global focus remains split, allowing them time for what we need to ask. It's unlikely this is simply about diverting the gaze of the US from their regional or internal ambitions, but it's more about creating the space to build, accrue resources, and prepare. Prepare for what, though? The invasion of Taiwan is, of course, the obvious answer, and more on that in a moment. Next, let's turn to India and secondary sanctions pressure. The US has already sanctioned India for importing Russian oil, and now pressure is growing on China and Turkey. If they continue buying or re-exporting Russian origin refined products, oil products, sanctioned by the EU, they risk secondary penalties, according to AP News. India has already paused purchases under the weight of this threat, leaving a bunch of Russian shadow fleet vessels hanging around after denying them entry to port where the refineries are located. China's been told directly, stop importing Russian crude or face access restrictions to financial systems. Turkish refiners face EU caps too. This could be a crucial step, but so far China has resisted the pressure coming from Trump and the US. And let's turn to North Korea's role as well. Is it puppet, partner, or simply an agent of chaos in this geopolitical equation? North Korea has reportedly sent missiles, shells, and even combat troops to Russia and thence Kursk, all with the tacit Russian approval, even at the request of Putin. And even if China's formal backing is limited, we cannot really know the true details about what they have planned and authorized versus what they are simply tolerating. But a US assessment warns North Korea has sent munitions, missiles, and thousands of combat troops to Russia. China's support has improved Russia's ability to withstand US sanctions, according to the New York Post. Russia and North Korea signed a mutual defense treaty last year, but Korea relies on Russia militarily, while China holds the broader political sway. North Korea's actions are enabled within the broader Beijing-Moscow framework, so says the Wall Street Journal. The China-Russia economic military scaffold. Economically, China dwarfs its partners. Its GDP is 6 times larger. Russia, Iran, and North Korea are integrated dependents on the Chinese economic might. According to the Wall Street Journal, China and Russia have deep military treaties, however, conduct regular SCO coordination, arms trade, and intelligence exchange. Chinese companies have been sanctioned for supplying drone parts. European intelligence has detected Chinese nationals trying to spy on Ukraine's missile programs, according to the Times. They are perhaps more active than many realize. And there is the strategic risk hanging over all of this, Taiwan and the geopolitical escalation. Allied defense ministers warn that should China invade Taiwan, the Axis could open simultaneous conflicts. Russia with NATO, North Korea with South Korea, Iran and the Middle East. That is according to the Wall Street Journal. Lithuania's defense minister said bluntly, if Ukraine falls to Russia, it may embolden China's ambitions in Asia, particularly regarding Taiwan. That was reported in AP News. The risk is clear. A fragmented Western alliance could be overwhelmed by multi-theatre crises designed to overload their response capabilities. What emerges is indeed sobering. A network of authoritarian regimes primarily enabled by China, sustaining war, technology transfer, oppression, and expansion. Ukraine is fighting not just Russia, but a global axis that includes Chinese logistics, North Korean weaponry, and Iranian drone technology. A moral imperative arises for Western democracies. We must confront not just one regime, but the loosely coordinated and complicit system that is enabling this aggression. That means strict sanctions, blocking component flows, pressuring refiners of oil, and reinforcing alliances between the rule of law countries. The failure to act now will, of course, cause the war in Ukraine to drag on with commensurate loss of life and property, a slow, grinding slaughter that exhausts both Ukraine and the invader. But all the while, China grows stronger, stealthier, and gains access to more advanced military technology, and its battle-tested and hardened technology that the West will struggle to keep pace with unless it also goes all in on the side of Ukraine.